And that strength is going to show itself again and again as we approach the end of this war. And on this last slide, what I want to point out to you is that the closer we get to Japan, the harder Japanese troops are fighting. For example, when General MacArthur actually invades the Japanese bases in the Philippines, it's going to be a bloodbath. He makes his way from Guadalcanal in 1942 to New Guinea, all the way to the Philippines. He oversees the largest naval battle in history, still to this day, called the Battle of Leyte Gulf, where America is actually losing the battle, but for some strange reason, the Japanese commander orders a retreat. Either way, he wins, and what we'll see are the Japanese willing to sacrifice themselves and fight to the death. That Battle of Leyte Gulf is the first time we saw what we call the kamikaze pilot, a suicide pilot who does extreme damage by crashing into the boats or into his targets. You can see one here about to crash into a destroyer, another here about to crash into an American ship as well. This kind of self-sacrifice wasn't limited to just kamikaze pilots. Like I mentioned that when he finally gets to the Philippines in 1944, that it's a bloodbath. Out of 81,000 Japanese troops in the Philippines, 80,000 of them die. Only 1,000 surrender. And they end up taking with them 100,000 Filipino civilians. 80,000 Japanese are willing to die. And the records show men that are wounded, on crutches, men that are still bleeding, lost limbs, charging the American lines. They would rather be shot and killed than go home alive. That kind of willingness to die scares the bejesus out of Americans. Because if they're willing to have 80,000 casualties in a place like the Philippines, what would they be willing to do if we actually invaded Japan? The death toll of American soldiers, if we invade Japan, is estimated to be in the millions. I'm not making that up. Millions of Americans might die if we have to invade those Japanese islands, because they will fight to the death. The last Japanese soldier in the Philippines surrendered in the 1970s. The dude refused to surrender. 1945 came and went, and that dude said, "I'm not going. Nope, not quitting." He stole food, he lived in the jungle, he fought on, sabotaging things to the 1970s. So the devotion of the Japanese to this cause is incredible. We're going to have to come up with a way to beat this nation without having millions of Americans die. And we'll talk about that in an upcoming lesson and in more detail. For now, we're good to go. Don't forget tomorrow, MacArthur.